a proven learning path that you could use to get into cybersecurity pen testing. And this video was inspired by Devang Patel. Hopefully I pronounced your name correctly. Down in the comments section, this was something that he was looking for, was a concrete path. And in the past, I've been a bit hesitant to create a one-size-fits-all map to something, because the way that I like to coach people, like in my own programs, if you ever sign up for Elevate Cyber courses or things like that, is I want to really take into account the individual, and because I know we all have different interests, different strengths, things like that. And the plan that might be perfect for one person is not necessarily perfect for another person. With that being said, what I'm going to present to you in this video is one path that you can go down, a concrete path that you could follow A to Z, to get into this field. And just know that this is not like the be all end all, the one way to do it. There are so many different ways you can do it. And I really recommend, finding a mentor in this field, whether it's me or someone else, completely fine. Whoever you go with, just make sure that, you really prioritize what you're interested in, because there's different ways you can specialize in this field, and so many different ways that you can go about learning this stuff and getting employed. So without further ado, let's jump into the screen here. I created a infographic for you guys, a mind map, if you will. And let me just zoom in quite a bit for the smaller screen sizes here, so you guys can see. So getting into pen testing, this will be the web app focus, right? And if you're not sure which to go for, I always recommend just trying out some, like I say in my other videos, I recommend trying out different focus areas and seeing which one interests you the most. What I will say is, if you want to learn and specialize in an area that probably has the highest number of jobs at the time, I would say it is web app, the web app focus, because everyone has a website. Companies have multiple websites for internal employees and external customers. And yeah, there's just so many web apps out there that need to be tested. So if we were to go for the web app focus, how should we go about it? Now, these things right here, I would say these four, you're going to see this is pretty much always your starting point, no matter what specialization path you go down. You're going to need to start by learning some HTTP basics. And now you notice all four of these are on the same level, so you can do some of these concurrently. You don't have to start at the top here and go down these paths. And honestly, before you go to this next level here, you want at least the basis of understanding in all four of these areas, all four of these categories. So start off with HTTP basics, learn how the internet works, what the requests and responses look like, things like that. And you could do this through the DevTools, but you might end up, diving into a little bit, some light burp suite as you explore the HTTP protocol and learn the basics, right? Maybe watch some YouTube videos out there that explain stuff, maybe even go into some, blog sites and stuff that can explain this to you. Just learn the basics, right? And same thing goes for networking, right? Learn like what TCP is versus UDP, learn, basic subnetting and, how an IP address breaks down. If you want to get a little bit fancy with it, maybe even learn about IPv6 versus IPv4 and stuff like that. So for the command line part, right, just get comfortable with that blinking cursor, right? Take some tasks that you already commonly do, such as moving files, right? You could start really simple, right? If you have a bunch of files that you need to move from one folder to another one, challenge yourself. Instead of doing it, now you might want to back this up first in case you end up messing something up. Just copy those files and back them up, basically. But you might want to try doing that through the command line, right? Through like a move command, right? Whether you're on Windows or Linux, and then figure out how you can do that same task from the command line rather than the graphical interface. And then eventually you can expand upon that, right, as we get further down the chain. So with programming, right, start really simple. Just do like some really basic tutorials, do like hello world, right? That's the starting point for most developers in a programming language. Just figure out how you can go from wherever you're your very first starting point is to writing some code that actually executes. It works as intended, right? And if you're interested in that, I'm creating a series where I'm going to be learning a programming language from scratch, specifically C#, but it will be very applicable to whatever programming language you want to learn. So definitely stay locked in on the channel, hit the like button and the bell notification so that you can see those videos as soon as they come out. I'll be dropping one of those this week as well. Should be a lot of help. So yeah, once you get past this first level, I would say you understand the prerequisites that you need in pen testing and cybersecurity to really get into the fun and interesting stuff. So some of this stuff you might find a little bit boring, or you might be really excited about. It really depends on the person, right? But just know that after this, you're going to get into some actual hacking stuff. So if you're really trigger happy, you want to get into the actual exploitation and stuff, it is coming very soon. That is where you jump into this next level here. I would say once you understand the basics of networking, then you can jump into some basic network pen testing. So this is things like understanding like what are the common ports, and for each port you can look into different tools and different ways you could go about looking for vulnerabilities within that protocol. So for example, if you're learning about the SMB protocol, you might learn about tools like SMB client, SMB map, crack map exec, some of the memory exploits that existed in older versions of SMB. You might look into like what Samba servers are, all of that kind of stuff, like how to interact with the SMB shares, how to get information on it, like what is SMB version 1 versus version 2 versus version 3. What does it mean if signing is not required? SMB signing. You could get like really far in depth depending on how far in depth you want to go on each protocol, right? Where I say here basic is that assuming this is not going to be your focus area in network pen testing, you still want a basic level of knowledge. So maybe for each protocol, you don't have to get quite as far in depth as what I just explained with SMB, but you want to learn like what are some basic tools that I can use to further enumerate all the common ports and have a basis of understanding there, be comfortable with doing that kind of stuff. So then from there, you want to get into Linux and Windows, this is in no particular order. Everything on this level you could do in any order. So say you wanted to go into Windows and Linux before you got into the basic network pen testing. That's honestly probably a good idea, because in this area here, you're going to be running a lot of tools, probably on Linux, and you're going to need a basic understanding of Linux command line here and how everything is structured, maybe even going into some automation and tooling in Bash, right? So you can kind of tie these two together. There can be some interconnectedness between some of these things, right? Like this might link here to Windows or Linux as well. So you can have like Bash scripts that do some automation in your workflow, and you can have some PowerShell scripts on Windows that automate certain things. And then you can do automation through higher level programming languages like Python. So as a suggestion here, I said you could go ahead and start learning Python at this time. Now, if you don't want to learn Python, you don't have to. You could learn any programming language really here, but I've found that this one, especially for pen testers, is probably the best first language to start with, because there's so much usage out there. People have used Python so much at this point that you could Google for any error you might encounter. And also there's all these libraries that are already written for you to do the thing that you're trying to do, even security related libraries that can help you with your pen testing. So excellent first language to get started with. And I know I didn't really talk too much on this level about Burp Suite. At this time is where you could start going through and learning about, I would start with the basics of Burp Suite, knowing, like, getting really comfortable with the proxy tab, HTTP history, all that, the repeater, the intruder, those different things there. You want to get comfortable with that, understand what it does. And then from there, I would say you could kind of gloss over some of the more advanced features of Burp Suite, but really what I would recommend is that most of the advanced features, just save it for when the need arises. Maybe you can learn about what they are so that when a potential to use like one of the more advanced features of Burp pops up, you know that it's capable of doing it. And then from there, you can look into, okay, how do I actually use this more advanced feature like Burp macros and things like that, right? And you're perfectly fine to stick to the community edition of Burp Suite as well. Something I'd like to mention, you don't have to get the pro version. You'll get experience with the pro version once you're actually on the job because you'll have a license, chances are at that point. But then when you get into this further level here, you're not going to go this far in depth in all of the areas, right? So I would say like you know enough about networking to really excel in the area of web app pen testing at this point. So you can pretty much, you don't have to continue on with anything too much further than basic network pen testing. This is where you can start getting into your black box web app pen testing. So now you can start CTFs. You can start the capture the flag type of stuff where you're trying to exploit a server that's running, you know, a web server, right? There's some kind of web app involved and you're trying to exploit that to get a foothold on the system, do some privilege escalation and stuff. Now, that's how that ties together, right? If you're doing black box web app pen testing, you could start learning about APIs at this point as well. If you want to specialize in web app pen testing, definitely something you need to be capable of. So I would start learning, okay, what are APIs? I would say first you might want to go down here to the app development part and just learn about what are APIs first before you do API pen testing. But then once you learn about what APIs are, you want to go into, okay, like what are some common vulnerabilities that exist with this technology and how can they be exploited? And, you know, like get comfortable with tools like Postman, especially because a lot of times that's what you'll be using on the job. You'll get Postman test cases and you'll be importing them into Postman, running the requests, making sure they work. You capture all that traffic in Burp, and then you can run like a Burp scanner. Obviously, that's a pro feature, but there's other tools out there that you can use, free tools that you might want to look into for API pen testing. Personally, I haven't really used them myself. I always use like I usually use one of the commercial tools on the job to do this, but you might want to look into how you can do some automated testing on this using some free available tools out there, like free vulnerability scanners and things like that. And also how to look into some manual exploitation of APIs. So that is where I'd recommend as well. At this point, I would say, now, if you do all this other stuff, let's come back to this, right? But at this point, if you have done all these things, you're ready to apply for jobs. But yeah, you want to be comfortable with some, you know, basic Linux privilege escalation in Windows as well at this point, right? It's going to help you with the black box web app pen testing. And even if you're not necessarily an expert in any of these areas, you're going to need to know this stuff. It's probably going to come up on job interviews and stuff as well. And some basic web app development, nothing too crazy, nothing developer level, just playing around with some of these different things here. If you can do basic web app development at this point and all these other things, you're ready to start applying for jobs, I would say, at this point. So congratulations, pat yourself on the back. And this is where the true work starts, right? Now, depending on your background, you might have to apply to tons of jobs. You might have to apply to like 700 jobs if you have no formal education in this area and no certifications. That's what I would say. Now, here's something I should probably add as an optional thing here at this point as well. Let me just go ahead and add it as an optional thing that you can do. And that is, I'll put the little asterisk here because this is optional, certifications. So this is where certifications come into play. As a bonus, if you want to do that, it's going to help you get a job in this field because it's going to help you get your foot in the door. And instead of needing to apply to 700 jobs, maybe you only need to apply to like 100 jobs because you have a pretty good certification. Now, this is where, you guys are probably going to ask me, what certification can you go for? If you're at this level, if you've gotten to this point by following this map here, this mind map, this flowchart, I would honestly say that you are ready to take on OSCP, provided, you've done some black box web app pen testing, just a little bit, right? You're definitely ready, and like the course will train you up, like the PWK, the PDF and all that will train you up on any knowledge gaps you might have, and it'll help you'll be prepared for it, basically. And then once you do the labs and things like that, then that's where you're truly going to level up and get to the point where you can get something like OSCP. Now, this might take a while, so keep in mind it's probably not going to be like something that you just get in a couple months, unless like you go 10x and you drop everything else you're doing and you only focus on OSCP. Then I would say, yeah, you could very well get this in 2 to 3 months. But if you have a lot of other things going on in your life, you want to take a lower and slower approach, maybe watch my video on the Absolute Beginner's Guide to the updated OSCP, because yeah, there's different approaches you can use now with some of the subscription models they have. But you could go for other certifications as well. OSCP is not a requirement. You can go for an eLearn certification. I know a lot of the guys watching this video are fans of eLearn security. So you go for some of these other ones. I would say if you want the one with the best ROI and the one that you're prepared for at this point, OSCP would probably be the choice I would go with. But yeah, there's a bunch of different options you have at this point. Now, beyond this area, right, is where you want to really start specializing, right? You probably have a job at this point, probably like a junior level pen testing job, and you want to expand from there, and you really want to focus on web app pen testing. Get into some white/gray box pen testing where you have the source code, access to the source code, and you are looking for vulnerabilities with the aid of that, right? And doing code review and things like that. So a good certification, if you want to go for a certification that focus on this stuff by offensive security, would be OSWE, the web exploitation cert. So that one is all about this. And this is where you can really specialize in web app pen testing specifically. Now for these other areas, right, before you apply to jobs, I would say, and before you go for OSCP, you do want to have some basic Active Directory knowledge. Basically, if you go for OSCP, it will teach you the Active Directory basics anyhow. But let's say you don't go for certs, I would say, yeah, Active Directory basics before you apply to jobs, because there's a high chance that you get asked some questions on Active Directory during the interview process. And this is a core part of, like I say, it's part of what I consider the big three in pen testing, something you definitely at least need a basic level of understanding on, no matter what specialization you ultimately choose. And this is a whole nother opportunity of specialization in and of itself here. You could specialize in this, especially if you want to be a red teamer, but sticking to the web app pen testing, you just need a basic level of understanding here. And with the app development stuff, I would just play around with some web development frameworks, know what the different common frameworks are. You don't have to be like capable of building stuff in them per se, but if you can build some really basic apps in them, I think it will definitely be helpful for you as you really specialize in this stuff. And let me add something, it just came to mind as well. I think there's always room for improvement in all the stuff that I do, but I would say start learning some Docker at this point, right? It'll be helpful to be able to spin up instances of different applications, learn how to pull down applications from Docker, how to containerize stuff. This is like these are all the more advanced things, and you definitely don't need to do this before you're ready to apply. You can apply to jobs before you have played around with like any of this stuff really. But this is like the extra, to quote offensive security, like the extra mile kind of activities that you can do. This is going to help you if you want to specialize in this area, right? Expose yourself to different programming languages. Maybe at this point you learn your second or third programming language. You build an API and you pen test your own API. I did a video on that as well. And this is going to help you on job interviews as well. And by the way, if you want additional training on how to ace these job interviews, you definitely need to check out the description below. I created a free PDF for you guys for the top 10 pen testing interview questions. So you absolutely need to know those. It's going to help you a ton on job interviews. So definitely go check that out at the link below. But once you've done all these things, you're essentially, there's no way that you don't have a job at this point. If you don't have a job at this point, you've done all of these things. Really, you can start applying, back here at this level, like I said. But if you still don't have a job, the main issue is that you're not doing this enough. You're not applying to enough jobs. Maybe you're just applying to like 5 a week and you think that like that should be enough. Chances are, if you still don't have a job, that's not enough and you need to ramp that up. But if you're really prolific about interviewing for these jobs and, you probably have a lot of nerves going into the interviews in the beginning, and a lot of self-doubt perhaps that you might need to work on. But if you practice this enough and you put yourself in that situation enough, you're going to get more comfortable in these job interviews, and you're going to do better and better in them. And eventually you are going to land your first job as a junior pen tester. So yeah, hopefully this video was of help to you. And if so, I have some more technical content on the screen right now. Be sure to drop your questions down in the comments below for the next Q&A video that we'll do on this channel next week. As always, I always appreciate the questions that you guys provide, and I want to make content that you guys are most interested in watching, of course. So yeah, I'll see you guys over in those technical videos. Thanks for watching.